Hi, this is Jeff with FrostyGarden.com, and have we got some exciting news for you? We are in the ground gardening. This is an exciting time because we started our seed sowing all the way back in March, and we're finally at the point where we can start putting plants in the ground. We only have 3 months of growing season here in Alaska, so we have no time to lose. We try to get started early with our cold hardy and frost tolerant plants, and we started that this last weekend, and we're going to show you what we did. So one of the biggest questions that we're trying to answer every year is, when is it safe to plant? And to get the answer to that question, we use a couple of different methodologies. The first is we actually measure our soil temperatures. We put a thermometer in the soil, and what we're looking for are soil temperatures that are above about 45 to 50 degrees. And what that tells us is, one, that the soil is fully thawed and that there's no ice in the soil. And two, what we do know is that a lot of our direct sows, like carrots and parsnips, turnips, radish, the things that we're going to sow directly into our soils, those require temperatures above 50 degrees. So generally speaking, that's the target that we're looking for, and we hit that here this last weekend. The other thing that we do is, about 2 weeks to last frost, we look at our 10-day forecast, and that gives us a pretty good idea of what we're going to see all the way up to our last frost date. And in this season, it didn't look like we were going to have any unseasonable dips in temperatures. We weren't going to have any issues with snow or hail or anything crazy like that come up. But it's important to recognize that in cold climates, it's always a gamble, no matter if you wait till your last frost date or not. We can have snows in June, we can have frosts in June, and it's very possible for those dates to be pushed back. They're averages. And there are no guarantees in gardening. So the way we mitigate that issue is we start with only cold hardy and frost tolerant plants. We teach and preach the concept of planting based on the temperature tolerance of plants, and it's really important in cold climate gardening to plant the plants that would survive a late frost early in the season and wait on those more sensitive plants that would be destroyed by a late frost. Well, before we get too far into this, we have a tradition over on our Facebook page where we produce a family photo of all of our seed-grown plants every year. Since we're doing video now, it seems appropriate to also do a family video of all of our seed-grown plants. We don't know exactly how many plants we have, and honestly, we're too lazy to count them, but we do know that this year we sowed over 1,600 seeds. Now, of course, we didn't bring all 1,600 plants forward. We estimate that we had maybe about 800 to 850 plants make it to the final phases. And we're super happy about that. We've been 100% seed grown for probably about 3 or 4 years now. And that's difficult because it takes a lot of expertise to know the growing characteristics of all the different plants and flowers that we tend to grow every year. But we are 100% seed grown now, and we're super proud of everything that we've raised. We always like to start our season with our raised beds. So our raised beds are located at our house, and we have about 160 square feet total. These are broken up into 2 40 square foot beds and 4 20 square foot beds. One of those 20 square foot beds is entirely dedicated to northern strawberries. In total, we do grow about 2,000 square feet overall, and we also have about 100 total containers. So what we do in our raised beds is we mostly plant intensively. So we do all of our direct sows, which are very intensively planted, and then we also grow all of our root veggies and other plants that lend themselves very well to intensive planting. We don't do anything large plants that we would grow in our raised beds. We generally prefer to grow smaller plants overall, and that way we can maximize the amount of food that we get out of our raised beds. So this year we decided to start with our direct sows. We have a 20 square foot bed that we have dedicated entirely to carrots. We like carrots, and they preserve exceptionally well. So we like to grow a lot of different varieties. I think we have about 6 or 8 different varieties that we plant overall. Everything from short ones to long ones, different colors, all of that kind of stuff. And it's important to know that carrots are a favorite of voles. If you have voles in your garden, they will definitely try to go after your carrots. So one of the things that we did when we built our raised beds is we actually laid underneath of the raised beds 1/4-inch hardware cloth, which prevents the voles from burrowing up underneath. Also, carrots are subject to root maggots, and so we protect them from above by using a bug netting. We install hoops over our beds, and our carrots are one of those crops that we try to protect all season long from root flies that will basically try to burrow into the ground and eat your carrots. So we take a lot of protections with our carrots, and that's also one of the reasons we dedicate an entire bed just to carrots. Moving on, we also have another larger bed, 40 square foot bed, that we dedicate entirely to direct sowed root vegetables. So this includes a lot of different kinds of plants, but we really like radish, so we plant a lot of radish. We also plant turnip, parsnips, rutabagas, and we also grow our peas in this bed. We grow a lot of radishes, and that's a very fast turn crop, so typically those are going to be ready in about 3 to 4 weeks. And once we get to that point, we'll basically phase that space into another type of plant that will grow in about 60 days, because at that point we'll have about 60 days left in the season. When it comes to our direct sows, like everyone, we have occasional problems with germination. Some seeds just simply won't germinate. So one of the things we do is about 2 weeks after we sow, we come in after the fact, and what we're looking for is any plants that haven't germinated in the space that they're supposed to grow. And if that's the case, we plant another seed. It's important to know that we have a truly detailed plan of everything that we're growing in our raised beds, so we know where everything is. We don't randomly plant anything, and basically every place has a dedicated plant that is going to be grown in that space. So we just consult our plan whenever we need to know what we have sowed there, and we don't have to do any guessing. Now that we're done with our direct sows, let's get started with our transplants. We're going to talk about our allium bed first. So we dedicate an entire 40 square foot bed all to allium. So allium includes things like onions, green onions, leeks, garlic. We actually aren't growing garlic currently, but we grow a ton of onions. We seeded almost 140 onions this year, and we're actually growing out 136 of them. We love onions because they preserve exceptionally well. We can keep them in our house, we can also freeze them if desired, and they last a very, very long time. Oftentimes we have our onions into the following season. We also like to grow a lot of leeks as well. This year we actually had some problems with our brand new leek seeds, and we had some germination issues with them. Unfortunately, we're growing less leeks, but we did get about 18 of them, so we're happy with that. We also grow our green onions in this bed, and those are great for salads and other dishes that we grow throughout the summer. We like to use them fresh, and they're just a wonderful addition to have in the garden. It's very important for us to cover our allium bed, and one of the reasons that we grow all of our allium in one single spot is so that we can protect them against root maggots. So there's a thing called an onion fly, and they're really bad, and it doesn't matter how north you go, you can have onion flies. They will survive negative 50 degrees. And the best protection that you can possibly provide is to cover them with a bug netting. So we install hoops over our bed, just like we did with our carrots, and we protect the crop with bug netting. We generally expect the first hatch of onion flies to come around usually early June, sometimes mid-June, but we just keep our allium bed covered because it's too risky for us to judge that hatch and when it's going to actually happen. Plus, the plants grow fine with the bug netting, so we have nothing to worry about there. Moving on, we dedicate an entire bed all to greens. So we like to grow a lot of head lettuce, and head lettuce is great for our salads, and so we grow romaines, red romaine, green romaine, and a couple of other varieties. And then we also use a lot of leaf lettuce. So we like to grow what is called a cut and come garden. So basically what that is leaf lettuce that grows, and when we go to make a salad, we come out and we harvest all sorts of different greens that we might want to have. So we have a lot of leaf lettuces, we also have mustards, we have mizuna that we like to grow, and general mesclun mixes and that kind of stuff. We used to be purists about the varieties that we would grow, and we kind of grew out of that. And what we like to grow with our leaf lettuce these days is just general mixes. And that way we get a great variety in our garden, and we have a lot of different lettuces and greens that we can put into our salads and other foods. So one of the things that we're trying to accomplish this year is to improve our succession planting of our leaf greens. And what succession planting means is basically planting at different times. What we're trying to achieve is the ability to have leaf greens and other mustards and things like that all season long. And so what we're going to do is we're going to stagger direct sows of our greens every month throughout the season. Also, lettuces and various leaf greens are typically very cold hardy, and so they will often survive 2 weeks after our first frost. So we can have, our goal is to have a perpetual leaf lettuce garden this year, and we're hoping that we can get there. So now we're on to our final bed, and this one is dedicated entirely to celery. We love homegrown celery. It's some of the best tasting stuff on earth. If you have judged celery based on what you get from the grocery store, you are missing out because homegrown celery is so good. We like to grow a lot of it too. We grow almost 50 plants, and we split that among your standard green celery, typically Utah variety, and then also a red celery. In some years it's a pink celery. So we grow a lot of different celery, and we also really like to grow celeriac. So celeriac is a cousin, if you will, to celery, and it's really good in things like soups and stews and stocks that we like to prepare in the fall. So most of our celery and all of our celeriac are a full season plant, so we harvest those at the very end of the season. And then also in this bed, we put a couple of other kinds of plants. Typically, it's whatever's left over. So this year we're growing pak choi, and we're also growing our Swiss chard in this bed. So we like to grow Swiss chard because that's a great vegetable for you. And we also found a variety called perpetual spinach. And one of the problems with growing spinach is that it's very heat sensitive. And this perpetual spinach is actually a Swiss chard, but it tastes almost exactly like spinach. But the good thing is that it doesn't bolt in response to heat, and so we typically get a much longer spinach harvest. Since we're in our raised beds, we'll talk about our very, very last bed, and that's our perennial strawberry bed. So we grow toklat strawberries, which were grown out of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and they're exceptionally cold hardy. They can survive down to zone 3, and even in some reports of them surviving down to zone 2. They're an exceptional strawberry that produce all season long, and we love it. And what's great about this bed is there's very little work that has to go into it. We put a little bit of compost in there, and that's about all we have to do, and we just get strawberries every year. So now that we've talked about all of our direct sows and our transplants, we need to talk about how we water our gardens. So for the first couple of weeks, we do think it's really important to use top watering techniques. So we come along with a hose sprayer usually every few days or when the soil starts to look dry, and we top water our plants. And this helps with seed germination for those seeds that are very lightly sowed into the soil. It also helps your transplants because they don't have deep roots yet. So we top water for about 2 to 3 weeks after we transplant and direct sow our garden, and then after that we switch things over to our irrigation system. We absolutely love our irrigation system because it makes watering absolutely easy. We simply turn on the pump that is from our collected rainwater, and we run it for about 30 minutes, and all of our plants get watered all at once. It's definitely a godsend to have in the garden. One more thing on watering. After you get done top watering your plants, they might look a little worse for wear. They might be bent over and in all sorts of out of shape. This isn't something you have to worry about. Your plants will bounce back. Plants are incredibly resilient, and you really don't have to worry about it. They'll be fine in a few days. So in case you're curious about the planting jig that you've seen in some of these videos, this is what's called a square foot gardening jig. And for us, we don't necessarily practice square foot gardening in a purist way, but we do borrow a lot of the techniques that we see in that particular growing technique. This jig is about $25 or $30 on Amazon. We'll put a link for it down in the comments. And we like it because basically it takes one less thing to think about off the table. So it makes it so we don't have to think about where our plant's going to go, and we get very even spacing, and we know that we're being appropriate for all of the different kinds of plants that we grow. For us, it was worth the cost. You could absolutely DIY one of these and make it very, very easily. We decided to buy this one just because it's one less thing that we had to do, and sometimes we have to choose our time over cost. Once again, I'm Jeff with FrostyGarden.com, and I want to thank you for watching. We're a small channel with a small potential audience, and those likes and subscribes really do help us. If you think we've earned it, we would love it if you gave us a subscribe. Once again, thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time.